Hello and welcome to another episode of the Better in Business podcast. I'm Jennifer Vanderwale, stepping in for Jeannie Savage as your co-host. Over the last 3 episodes, we've been building the foundations for getting things done. We started by recognizing our value, and then we explored the mindset hurdles that quietly hold many business owners back. In the last episode, we also looked at protecting our productivity and understanding when we work best and learning to become proactive instead of reactive. Today, we're continuing our journey through the productivity section of the bookkeeping practice blueprint. We're looking at 2 more of Jeannie's principles, and these principles I genuinely believe have changed the way that I live and work. The first is the law of polarity, and the second is building simple habits that create lasting change. These might sound like completely different topics, but they're actually deeply connected. One is connected to how you think, and it changes how you think. The other is connected to how you act, and it changes how you act. When these 2 things begin working together, that's when real momentum starts to build.
You've tuned into the Better in Business podcast, and I'm your host, Jeannie Savage. I'm a multi-award winning business veteran and head of the Strategic Bookkeeper Network. My network of strategic bookkeepers is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs do better in business. This podcast aims to challenge your thinking. If you're not thinking the right way, how can you act the right way? Each episode will dive into key drivers of success, which I also call the rules of the game. Learn the rules and play to win. Let's go. I like to start every episode by reminding you that it is globally recognized that pillar number 1 for success is up-to-date, accurate bookkeeping, which is the only way you can see how your business is performing in terms of profit and cash. If your books aren't right up to date, visit betterinbusiness.global, drop me a line and I'll connect you with a certified strategic bookkeeper. Fire your bookkeeper and hire a strategic bookkeeper. Bookkeeping is a cost, whereas strategic bookkeeping is an investment that averages a 10x return on the fees.
So let's start with the law of polarity. At its simplest, this principle reminds us that every situation has more than one perspective. Where there is challenge, there is also opportunity. Where there is disappointment, there is often learning. Where there is fear, there is usually growth waiting on the other side. Now, before we go any further, I want to be really clear. This isn't about pretending difficult situations aren't difficult. Life is going to happen. Business is going to happen. There will be moments that will be genuinely hard. However, I want to ask you, have you ever noticed that 2 people can experience the exact same situation and walk away from it with completely different stories? One will see only the setback, the other sees the lesson. The situation didn't change, only the perspective did. So the law of polarity invites us to take the opportunity to ask a different question. So instead of asking, why is this happening to me? What if we asked, what if this is happening for me? Not because it's enjoyable and not because we would choose it, but because there may be something here that's preparing us for what's next. That single question has changed the way I approach challenges, both in business and in life. Looking back, I can clearly see the law of polarity at work in my own business journey. When I purchased my bookkeeping practice, I honestly felt overwhelmed. The business was undercharging, there were changes that needed to happen, I was taking on staff, and I was working full-time, so I was exhausted before I really began. At the time, I saw problems everywhere, but what I couldn't see then was that those problems, what they were preparing me for. So the lessons that I managed to get over the last few years has been learning to value myself, learning to lead, learning to communicate difficult decisions, learning to charge appropriately, learning to back myself. Every challenge became a lesson. Every lesson built my confidence. And every piece of confidence allowed me to create a better business. If someone had told me then that one day I'd actually be grateful for those many challenges, I probably wouldn't have believed them. But, sitting here today, I genuinely am. Because without those experiences, I wouldn't be the coach or the business owner or even the person that I am today. So I'd love for you to take a moment and just think about your own business. And I want you to sit back and view it as the outside observer would and ask yourself, what's the challenge that's consuming your thinking right now? Maybe it's cash flow or difficult clients, finding staff. Maybe it's self-doubt. Whatever it is, I want you to pause for a moment. I want you to ask yourself, what if this is happening for me rather than to me? What could this situation be teaching me? What opportunity might exist that I'm simply too close to see right now? You don't have to answer immediately. Sometimes simply asking a better question begins the changing of your perspective. And I also want you to remember that changing your perspective is incredibly powerful, but perspective on its own doesn't change your business. At some point, your new thinking has to become a new behavior. And that's exactly where habits come in. Once your perspective starts changing, your behavior can begin to change too. This brings us to Jeannie's fourth productivity principle, habits, or as Jeannie reminds us, KISS. Keep it super simple. I absolutely love this because we can all have a tendency to make change far more complicated than it needs to be. We tell ourselves, Monday, I'll change my routine. I'll exercise every day. I'll write every morning. I'll meditate. I'll journal. I'll stop checking emails. I'll eat perfectly. And by Wednesday, we're exhausted. The problem in this case, it's not motivation. The problem is trying to change everything at once. So one of the things I've really come to understand deeply through working with both Jeannie and Amy was how important it is to keep change simple. We often think that if we want bigger results, we need bigger changes. But in reality, lasting change usually comes from the smallest of steps. Amy taught me a lot about how our brains respond to change. When we try to change too much too quickly, our brain can quite literally start setting off alarm bells because it wants us safe. It wants us doing what feels familiar, even if that familiar is no longer serving us. So the more dramatic the change, the more resistance we often create for ourselves. That's why so many New Year's resolutions don't last, or why we start a new full routine full of enthusiasm, only to find ourselves back where we started a few weeks later. Jeannie also encourages us to play the long game, and I think these two ideas really fit together beautifully. Playing the long game doesn't mean moving slowly because you're afraid. It means recognizing that meaningful, lasting change takes time. It's built through bite-sized improvements, through millimeter steps, through showing up consistently, even when the progress feels almost invisible. Because those millimeter steps have a remarkable way of becoming kilometers over time. And that's something I have experienced firsthand. When I look back at my own business, the biggest transformations didn't come because of one massive decision. It happened because I committed to making small improvements over and over again until they simply became part of who I was and how I operated. Every breakthrough is simply the visible result of hundreds of invisible, consistent decisions. When I look back again at the changes I made in my own business, I can see they weren't built on huge moments of motivation. They were built on small and intentional habits. But perhaps the biggest lesson wasn't learning to build the habits. It was learning to let go of the expectation that I had to get it right every single day. Because life happens and clients need you and team members have questions and family comes first sometimes. Business owners don't have the luxury of every day going according to plan. For a long time, if I didn't complete everything on my to-do list, I'd tell myself that I failed. One task rolled over to tomorrow, and somehow that became evidence that I wasn't productive enough. Now I see it differently. Plans aren't there so life goes exactly the way you expect it. They're there so that when life does happen, and it will, you always know where you're trying to get back to. Some days you will achieve everything you set out to do. Other days you will spend the whole day putting out unexpected fires. Neither day defines you. The most important thing is to just keep moving forward. So one of the biggest mindset shifts for me was learning to remove unnecessary pressure. We often tell ourselves that we're going to build a new habit and we have to do it properly. If I'm going to exercise, it has to be for an hour at the gym. If I'm going to meditate, it has to be 30 minutes every morning. If I'm going to write, I need 2 uninterrupted hours. But if I'm honest, thinking that way really stresses me out before I've even begun. So instead, I started asking myself a much simpler question. What is the smallest version of this habit that still moves me forward? It might be a 15-minute meditation or even a 5-minute one at my desk. It might be a 10-minute walk or just routinely putting small walking breaks in my day. It might be writing for just 15 minutes before checking my emails. Maybe it's simply sitting quietly with my thoughts before the day begins. The habit itself isn't the most important part. The most important part is removing the barriers that stop you from starting. Because once you've started, it's often easier to keep going. The point isn't about how long you do it. The point is that you keep showing up. That's what creates lasting change. Another habit that has completely changed how I work is planning my priorities. I still work from a very short list, but I no longer expect every single item to be ticked off every single day because I'm the business owner. And if you're listening to this, chances are you are too. Business has a way of asking us to pivot, sometimes several times a day. A client has an emergency, a team member needs support, an opportunity appears that wasn't in the plan. That doesn't mean the day has failed. It means that the plan adapted. Instead of criticizing yourself for what you didn't get done, I want you to think about celebrating what you did achieve, even if what you achieved wasn't on the list. And then calmly remove the remaining priorities to tomorrow's plan. That's not failure, that's leadership. There's one more concept from Jeannie that has become one of my favorites, and I really want to share it with you today. Whenever I'm looking to create my task list, I always ask myself 3 simple questions before anything goes on the list. Do it, delegate it, or delete it. Now, I'm going to say this part again, and I want you to take the time to write it down this time. So the 3 things are do it, delegate it, or delete it. Now, this is such a simple process, but it's incredibly powerful because not everything belongs on your plate. Some things genuinely need your attention, and some things would be better done by someone else on your team or some external expert. And some things simply don't need doing. And I think this is the one that many of us overlook. We carry tasks simply because they've always been there, not because they're still important. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do isn't adding another task. Sometimes it's creating enough space to think. It's having the courage to cross something off completely. That simple exercise freed up more time for me in my business than almost any productivity app ever could. Because proactivity isn't about trying to fit more into your day. Sometimes it's just about giving yourself permission to carry less. There's a quote that I come back to often. We overestimate what we can achieve in a day, but we dramatically underestimate what small, consistent actions can achieve in a year. I think that's why so many people give up early. They're looking for massive change instead of recognizing that every small habit is a vote for the future they're trying to create. You don't change your life in one big decision. You change it through hundreds of small decisions that begin pointing in a new direction. And that's exactly why the law of polarity and simple habits belong together. When you combine these few ideas, everything that you start doing, it begins to shift. The law of polarity changes how you see your circumstances, and then the habits change how you respond to them. Perspective without action creates frustration. Action without perspective creates burnout. But together, they create momentum. Remember to give yourself permission to be where you are right now, to be a work in progress. And remember that you are not aiming for perfection. You're aiming for consistency, because progress over perfection will win the game every time. And consistency will take you further than intensity ever will. Over the next month, I'd love for you to focus on just two things. The first is awareness. When something doesn't go to plan, I really want you to take the time to pause, even just a few minutes, and ask yourselves, what if this is happening for me rather than against me? You don't need the answer immediately. You simply need to look for the lesson, the opportunity, or the growth. Secondly, choose one habit, just one, not 10, not a complete overhaul, one habit that supports the future version of yourself. Then repeat it consistently and remember to ask, what is the smallest version of a step I can take towards this habit today? And repeat consistently, because this process creates extraordinary change over time. So to sum up today, we've explored how changing your perspective and simplifying your habits can completely change the way you experience business. In the next episode, we'll finish the productivity framework by looking at Jeannie's final principle, showing up as a leader and manager in your business. Because once you've built the mindset, protected the productivity, learned to find the opportunity and challenge, and developed the habits to support your success, the final step is learning to lead yourself consistently. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.
I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. I would love to help you start doing better in business right now by giving you a free little ebook. It's a how-to guide. It's called The 7 Deadly Cash Flow Sins. And also I've developed a business health check for you. It's super high value. Both are available at betterinbusiness.global. If you would like to fire your bookkeeper and hire a strategic bookkeeper to start enjoying a return on investment and get the support you need to optimize your business cash and profit and time well, simply visit betterinbusiness.global, drop me a line and I'll connect you with a certified strategic bookkeeper near you. I'll see you in the next episode.